We are looking at the kidney as a master chemist, a high-stakes regulator that manages the electrical potential of every single cell in your body. We're breaking down Chapter 30 of our source material, which covers the regulation of potassium, calcium, phosphate, magnesium, and then, finally, the master control of blood volume and pressure.
It's a massive topic, and frankly, the stakes really are that high. When we talk about homeostasis in other contexts, it can sound like a gentle buzzword, oh, the body likes balance.
Yeah, a bit academic.
But when we're talking about potassium regulation, homeostasis is quite literally the only thing standing between you and the morgue.
Let's put some numbers on that, because I think that really drives it home. I was reading through the source material, and the precision required here is just, it's mind-boggling. The body regulates extracellular potassium concentration to about 4.2 milliequivalents per liter.
Right. 4.2 is the sweet spot, the magic number.
But the range is so tiny, the text says it rarely varies more than 0.3 plus or minus.
An incredibly narrow window.
And if that number creeps up from 4.2 to, say, 7 or 8?
Cardiac arrhythmia. Death. It's that serious.
Wow.
You're talking about a difference of a few milliequivalents. It's like a teaspoon of salt in a swimming pool, roughly between a healthy, functioning human and a fatal heart rhythm. And what makes this deep dive so fascinating is that our environment, our diet, even our own cellular metabolism are constantly trying to push us out of that window.
So our mission today is to decode how the kidney manages this impossible task. Yep. We're going to organize this into two main battlefronts.
Exactly. We need to structure this so we don't get lost in all the chemistry. The first front is the micro-regulation.
The small stuff.
Well, small but deadly. That's the specific ions. Potassium, calcium, magnesium, phosphate. How do we keep those individual elements perfectly balanced? And then once we understand the pieces, we move to the second front. The macro-regulation.
The plumbing.
The plumbing, yes, ideally. How does the kidney regulate the total volume of fluid in the entire body to keep our blood pressure from either collapsing or skyrocketing?
Because they're connected.
Because, as we'll see, managing the ions and managing the volume are two sides of the very same coin.
Okay, micro and macro. Let's start with the micro. We have to start with potassium because that death statistic really woke me up.
It should. Potassium is the silent killer if it's mismanaged.
So let's look at the distribution. The source draws this huge contrast between what's inside our cells and what's outside. It feels almost unbalanced on purpose.
It is unbalanced, and it's fundamental to our physiology. We are basically walking bags of potassium.
Bags of potassium. That's a flattering image.
It's true, though. About 98% of the total potassium in your body is locked away inside your cells. So if you take a standard 70-kilogram adult, they have about 28 liters of fluid inside their cells. That's the intracellular fluid.
Okay, so picture about 14 large soda bottles worth of fluid just stuffed inside your tissues.
Right, and the concentration of potassium in there is massive, about 140 milliQL.
Whoa.
Which means there are nearly 4,000 milliequivalents of potassium sitting just a few nanometers away from your blood, just on the other side of a cell membrane.
Okay, so nearly 4,000 units inside and outside. In the blood.
In the extracellular fluid, that's the blood in the fluid between cells, you only have about 14 liters, and the concentration is tiny, just 4.2 MEQL. That works out to only about 59 milliQ total.
Wait, hold on. Let me get this straight. 3,920 inside the cells versus 59 outside. That is a massive, massive disparity.
It is. And that tiny 59 milliQ is the fragile number we talked about earlier. That is the number that your heart sees. If that 59 becomes 80 or 90, the heart stops.
So here's the problem that the source material highlights, and this is where that tightrope analogy really hit me. Let's say I sit down and eat a big meal. A steak, maybe some potatoes, a banana.
A healthy meal.
A healthy meal, right?
Yeah.
That meal could easily contain 50 milliequivalents of potassium.
Easily. A potassium-rich meal is exactly that.
So if I have only 59 in my blood to begin with, and I dump another 50 in there for my lunch, I've almost doubled the total amount in the extracellular fluid.
Mathematically, yes. If all that potassium stayed in your blood, your plasma concentration would rise by about 2.9 MEQL. That would take you from a healthy 4.2 up to over 7.
And 7 is cardiac arrest territory.
You would be in very, very big trouble.
So this is my question. This is the whole point. Why don't I die every time I eat a banana? Why doesn't a potato salad kill me?
Because the kidney is too slow.
Too slow. I thought the kidney was the master regulator.
It is the ultimate regulator, but it's not the immediate one. It takes hours to excrete that much potassium. You'd be dead long before the kidney could pee it all out. So before the kidneys can even think about excreting that potassium, your body needs an immediate emergency response.
It needs a plan B.
It needs a closet.
A closet.
Think of it this way. You have guests coming over, that's the meal. Your living room, that's your blood. It
Wow.
has to stay pristine. You can't have trash lying around.
Right.
But you can't take the trash to the dump yet. The dump is hours away, so what do?
I shove it all in the hall closet and hold the door shut.
Exactly. You redistribute it, you take the potassium from the blood, and you shove it into the cells where there is already a ton of potassium, so a little more won't hurt. This is the first line of defense, the internal redistribution.
Okay, so let's talk about the mechanism of the closet. Who is shoving the potassium in there? What are the good guys in this story?
The biggest player, and this might be a surprise, is insulin.
See, this confused me at first. I always had thought insulin was just for sugar. You eat a candy bar, insulin goes up, sugar goes into your cells, end of story.
That's the popular narrative for sure. But physiologically, insulin is a broad storage hormone. It doesn't just store energy, it stores electrolytes. When you eat a meal, your blood sugar goes up and you release insulin.
Okay.
That insulin obviously helps store the sugar, but at the same time, it dramatically ramps up the sodium-potassium ATPase pump on your cell membranes.
The pump that pulls potassium in.
Right. It aggressively pulls potassium from the blood into the cell. It's coordinating the storage of nutrients and the safety of your electrolytes at the exact same time. It's an incredibly efficient system.
So if I'm a diabetic, what does this mean?
That's the clinical pearl right there.
Yeah.
If you're a type 1 diabetic with no insulin or a type 2 with severe insulin resistance, you don't have that closet key.
You can't open the door.
You can't open it efficiently.
Yeah.
If you eat a potassium-rich meal, you can't shift it into the cells as well. Your blood potassium can shoot up much higher, much more dangerously than it would in a healthy person. It's a very real clinical risk.
Wow. Okay, so insulin is player one, the main mover.
Mm.
Who else helps shove the mess in the closet?
Aldosterone. Now, we usually think of aldosterone as the kidney hormone for salt, and we will get to that in the macro section for sure.
Right.
But it also acts on almost all cells in the body to promote potassium uptake.
So it works systemically, not just in the kidney. It's not just a kidney hormone.
Correct. It's a systemic effect. This is why if you have a disease like Conn syndrome, where you have a tumor making way too much aldosterone, you are constantly shoving potassium into the cells and also telling the kidney to excrete it. You end up with hypokalemia, low blood potassium,
And the opposite condition.
Addison disease. The adrenal glands fail, no aldosterone, you can't hide the potassium, and you can't excrete it. You end up with dangerous hyperkalemia.
Okay, there was one more good guy mentioned in the source, beta-adrenergic stimulation. This is adrenaline, right? Epinephrine.
Yes, epinephrine, fight or flight. It also pushes potassium into cells.
Now, why would the body do that? If I'm running from a bear, why do I care about my potassium levels?
Think about what your muscles are doing when you're running from a bear. They're firing thousands of times a second. Every time a muscle fiber contracts and repolarizes, it releases a tiny bit of potassium. It leaks out.
It leaks out, so you're dumping potassium from your muscles into your blood.
You're dumping massive amounts of potassium into your blood. If you're sprinting for your life, that could be a lethal dose. If you didn't have a mechanism to push it right back in, your heart might stop right in the middle of the chase. Epinephrine prepares the cells to reabsorb that leaked potassium instantly. It's a safety mechanism.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
But the source makes a really interesting point about medication here. Beta blockers.
Right. This is huge. Millions and millions of people take beta blockers for high blood pressure or heart disease. Propranolol, atenolol, metoprolol.
So by blocking that beta receptor, aren't we blocking this safety valve?
To an extent, yes. By blocking that beta-adrenergic effect, you are slightly impairing the body's ability to hide potassium. Now, for a normal person at rest, it's fine.
Right.
But if that person eats a massive load of potassium or goes for an incredibly intense run, their potassium spike will be higher and more prolonged than someone not on the drug.
It makes the closet door just a little harder to close.
Exactly. A
Yeah.
little stickier.
Okay, so those are the forces pushing potassium in. But the source also lists factors that drag potassium out of the closet and dump it back into the blood. The bad guys. The one that seemed most complex was acidosis.
Acidosis is a classic medical school concept. It really comes down to a trade.
A trade.
Imagine the cell membrane as a border crossing. When your blood becomes acidic, it means there are too many hydrogen ions, H plus all I, are floating around in the blood. Acid is dangerous. It denatures proteins. So the body tries to buffer this by hiding the hydrogen ions inside the cells.
Okay, so hydrogen goes in to get out of the blood.
But you have to maintain electrical neutrality. You can't just shove a bunch of positive charges, the hydrogen ions, into the cell without moving some other positive charges out. Otherwise, the cell would become electrically unstable.
As hydrogen goes in,
Potassium gets kicked out.
it's a swap, a one-for-one exchange.
It's a swap. Plus, to make matters worse, acidosis physically reduces the activity of that sodium-potassium pump we talked about earlier. So the pump stops pulling potassium in, and the swap actively pushes potassium out. The result, hyperkalemia.
So if a patient comes into the ER and their blood is acidic, maybe they're in diabetic ketoacidosis, you can almost guarantee their potassium's going to be high.
Almost always, and it's a critical point in treatment. Fixing the acidosis often fixes the potassium.
That is fascinating. It's like a congested traffic system where diverting one car off an exit ramp forces another one onto the main highway.
That's a great analogy. It really is.
Okay, so we've survived the meal. We've stuffed the potassium into the cells thanks to insulin and aldosterone. The immediate crisis is averted, but we can't just keep it there forever, right? The closet is getting full.
Right. That's a temporary solution. Eventually, you have to take the trash to the curb, and that's when the kidney finally clocks in.
The ultimate regulator.
The
factory. I want to visualize this assembly line because the source breaks down how potassium moves through the kidney tubules in a very, very specific way. It seems like the first part of the kidney doesn't really think. It just works on autopilot.
That's a very fair assessment. Let's look at the flow. You filter the blood at the glomerulus. It's a pretty constant process. You filter about 756 millieq of potassium per day.
That's way more than the 59 we have in our blood at any one time.
Oh, yes, because you're filtering your entire plasma volume over and over and over again. Now, that filtered fluid enters the first section, the proximal tubule, and it reabsorbs a huge chunk of that potassium, about 65%.
And does this number change if I eat a banana versus if I don't?
Not really. It's a fixed percentage. It's a bulk reabsorber. It just grabs 65% and pulls it back into the blood. Then the fluid goes to the loop of Henle. It grabs another 25–30%.
So by the time we get to the end of the line, the distal tubule, we've already taken back over 90% of the potassium we filtered.
Correct. And that part of the kidney, the proximal tubule and the loop of Henle, is on autopilot. It functions to recover the bulk of the electrolytes and water. It doesn't make nuanced decisions based on your diet.
So where is the brain of the operation? Where does the kidney decide, oh, we have too much potassium today, let's get rid of it? Or, we're running low, better save some.
That happens in the very last segments, the late distal tubules and the cortical collecting tubules. This is the control center. This is where the decisions are made.
Okay, let's zoom in on the cells here. The source calls them the principal cells.
These are the stars of the show when it comes to potassium. If you look at figure 30-3 in the source, it diagrams this cell. It is an exquisitely designed machine for one purpose: secretion.
And secretion means moving something from the blood to the urine to get rid of it.
Most things in the kidney are filtered and then reabsorbed, which means saved. Potassium is unique because in these principal cells, it is actively secreted. We actively dump it into the urine.
Okay, so how does the principal cell do it? What's the mechanism?
Imagine the cell. On the side touching the blood, the basolateral membrane, you have that good old sodium-potassium pump again. It is frantically pumping potassium from the blood into the principal cell.
So the cell itself fills up with a high concentration of potassium, just like the other cells in the body.
Right. It creates a very high intracellular concentration. Now, on the other side of the cell, the side touching the urine, the luminal membrane, there are special passive channels.
The source names them. The Ramin K channels and the large BK channels.
Exactly. RAM-K stands for renal outer medullary potassium channel. Because the pump has packed the cell so full of potassium, there's a huge pressure, a huge electrochemical gradient for it to leave. It just flows down its gradient right through these RAM-K channels and spills out into the urine.
So the principal cell is basically a pressurized pump that pulls potassium from the blood and then sprays it out into the urine.
That's the core mechanism. And the beauty of it is that this is a regulated process. If you need to dump more potassium, you can turn on the pump harder, or you can insert more of those RAM-K channels into the membrane to open more floodgates.
Wait, I have to ask about the other cells that are mentioned there, the intercalated cells. They sound like the backup singers?
They are the supporting cast, but they are absolutely crucial for the opposite condition. Principal cells are for getting rid of excess potassium. Intercalated cells, specifically the type A ones, are for saving it.
So if I'm, say, starving in the desert and have zero potassium intake for days.
Then your principal cells will shut down their secretion, and the type A intercalated cells will activate a special pump, a hydrogen-potassium ATPase pump. It's on the urine side, and it actively grabs the tiny bits of potassium remaining in the urine and pulls them back into the blood.
So the kidney can literally switch modes from a potassium dumping machine to a potassium scavenging machine.
Instantly. It's a beautifully adaptable system.
Okay, so we have the machinery. The principal cells are the engine. But what is the foot on the gas pedal? What tells the principal cell, hey, speed up, we just ate a steak?
There are three main controllers. The first one is the most simple and direct: plasma potassium concentration itself.
Just the level in the blood.
Yes, it's a direct effect. If the blood bathing the basolateral side of the cell has high potassium, it directly stimulates that NEK pump. It also triggers a process that moves more of those ROMK channels up to the membrane. You don't even need a hormone for this part. The cell just tastes the potassium and responds immediately.
Okay, that's simple enough. Direct feedback, controller number 2.
Aldosterone. We keep coming back to this hormone, and for good reason.
The source puts a lot of weight on this.
Mhm.
Figure 30-8 describes an experiment with dogs that I found really compelling. Can you walk us through that? Because it feels like it proves how absolutely vital this hormone is.
This is a classic, elegant physiology experiment. Researchers took a group of dogs and they removed their adrenal glands so they couldn't make any of their own aldosterone.
Okay, so the aldosterone factory is closed.
Closed for business. Then they gave the dogs a fixed, continuous infusion of aldosterone, just a low survival dose. But the crucial point is, the dose couldn't change. It was a flat line.
So they broke the feedback loop. The dogs had aldosterone, but they couldn't ramp it up in response to a challenge.
Exactly. They broke the feedback loop. Then they increased the dietary potassium intake of these dogs about 7-fold.
A massive potassium binge. What happened?
Well, in a normal dog with intact adrenal glands, if you do that, their plasma potassium would rise just a tiny, tiny bit, from 4.2 to maybe 4.3. The aldosterone system would spike, the kidneys would fire up secretion, and they would dump the excess. No problem.
But in these dogs with the broken feedback loop,
Their potassium skyrocketed. The graph shows it going from about 3.8 up to almost 4.7 or even higher. Now, 4.7 doesn't sound like a huge number, but in physiological terms, that is a massive loss of control. It proves that without the ability to ramp up aldosterone, the body simply cannot handle normal dietary variations in potassium.
so high potassium in the blood triggers the adrenal gland to release aldosterone, which then travels to the kidney and tells the principal cells, open the floodgates.
Precisely. It's a classic negative feedback loop.
Now, the third controller is the one that really twisted my brain at first. Tubular flow rate.
This one is less about chemistry and more about pure fluid dynamics.
Explain it to me. How does the speed of pee affect potassium?
Imagine the principal cell trying to secrete potassium into the urine through those ROMK channels. If the fluid in the tubule is stagnant, not moving very fast, the potassium comes out, sits there, and the concentration of potassium in the urine rises immediately.
Okay, it builds up right outside the cell.
Right, and once the concentration in the urine gets high enough to match the concentration inside the cell, the flow stops. You've reached equilibrium. You can't dump any more potassium because the gradient is gone.
The pipe gets backed up.
Exactly. But now imagine the flow is fast. A high volume of fluid is washing through the tubule. It constantly sweeps the secreted potassium away downstream. The concentration of potassium right outside the cell stays very low. The gradient from inside the cell to outside remains steep, so the cell can just keep dumping and dumping and dumping.
So high urine flow equals high potassium excretion.
All other things being equal, yes.
But wait, this leads directly to the high sodium diet paradox that's mentioned in the outline. And this is where I need an analogy because my head was spinning trying to connect all the dots.
It's one of the most elegant parts of renal physiology. It's beautiful. Let's break it down.
Okay. Normally, we know that aldosterone's job is to save sodium and dump potassium.
Correct. That's its main action in the kidney.
So if I eat a bag of salty chips, a high sodium diet,
Yeah.
my body wants to get rid of all that extra salt, so it should turn off aldosterone, right?
Right. High salt suppresses aldosterone secretion. The body says, I don't need to save any more sodium.
But if aldosterone is turned off, shouldn't I stop excreting potassium?
Yeah.
If aldosterone is the gas pedal for potassium dumping and my foot is off the pedal, shouldn't I retain potassium and get dangerous hyperkalemia just because I ate some chips?
Logic suggests yes. Low aldosterone should mean low potassium excretion. But, as you pointed out, That doesn't happen. Your potassium stays perfectly normal.
Why not? What's the trick?
The trick is the flow rate. When you eat a high-salt diet, you tend to drink more water. Your blood volume expands slightly, your glomerular filtration rate, your GFR, goes up. The overall flow of fluid through the kidney tubules increases dramatically.
So you have two opposing forces at play.
Think of it like a car. You have one foot on the brake. Low aldosterone is trying to slow down potassium excretion. But at the same time, you have one foot on the gas. High tubular flow rate is trying to speed up potassium excretion.
And they cancel each other out.
They cancel each other out almost perfectly. If you look at figure 3010 in the source material, it shows these two vectors balancing each other. The drop in aldosterone-stimulated secretion is perfectly offset by the rise in flow-stimulated secretion. This ensures that when you change your salt intake, you don't accidentally mess up your potassium regulation.
That is incredibly clever engineering. It essentially decouples the two systems.
It decouples them. It allows you to regulate your salt balance without killing yourself with potassium. Evolution is a brilliant engineer.
Okay, let's pivot. We've wrestled with potassium. I want to talk about calcium. Because while potassium can stop the heart, it seems like calcium can turn us into stone if we aren't careful.
Calcium is a completely different beast. With potassium, we were worried about pumps and channels and gradients. With calcium, the very first thing you have to understand is that the number on your blood test can lie to you.
What do you mean by that?
When your doctor measures your total calcium, roughly half of that calcium is physiologically useless. It's bound to proteins, mostly albumin. It's just hitching a ride in the blood. It's not chemically active.
So only the ionized or free calcium is what matters.
The free ionized calcium is what drives your nerves, your muscles, your blood clotting. It's the only part that does anything. And here is where it gets really weird. That binding to albumin is extremely sensitive to pH.
This is the paper bag trick from the movies,
This
right?
is exactly the paper bag trick. It's a classic ER scenario. A patient comes in having a panic attack. They are hyperventilating, breathing super fast.
Just huffing and puffing.
When you hyperventilate, you blow off huge amounts of CO2. When you lose CO2, your blood becomes alkaline or basic.
Alkalosis.
In alkalosis, the hydrogen ions that are normally attached to albumin fall off. This frees up all these negative docking sites on the protein. Guess what positively charged ion loves negative docking sites? Calcium. So the albumin in the blood suddenly grabs all the free ionized calcium and holds onto it. The total calcium in the blood hasn't changed at all, but the free calcium plummets instantly.
And low free calcium makes nerves hyperexcitable.
Right. The nerves start firing spontaneously. The patient gets tetany muscle spasms. Their hands cramp up into this classic claw shape. It's terrifying for them. But all you have to do is make them breathe into a paper bag to rebreathe their CO2, fix the pH, the albumin lets go of the calcium, and the symptoms vanish.
That is wild. Now, regarding the kidney, does it handle calcium like potassium? Does it secrete it?
No, that's a key difference. Calcium is not secreted. The kidney's job with calcium is just to save it. The amount you pee out is simply what you filtered but failed to reabsorb.
Okay, so where do we reabsorb it? Same story as before.
Pretty much. The proximal tubule again takes the lion's share, about 65%. But here, it's mostly paracellular.
Paracellular. That means between the cells, not through them.
Exactly. It doesn't go through the cell. It sneaks through the leaky cracks between the cells, dragged along passively by water and sodium reabsorption.
Then the loop of Henle takes another 25–30%.
Yeah.
And this part sounded like magnets repelling each other in the text.
It is exactly that.
Right.
In the thick ascending limb of the loop, the cells are actively pumping positive ions like sodium and potassium into the urine. This creates a net positive electrical charge in the tubular fluid.
Okay.
Since calcium is also a positive ion, CoD++ AIM, that positive charge in the urine literally pushes it away, repelling it and forcing it back into the blood through those paracellular pathways.
But surely there's a regulator. There has to be a boss for calcium. Who is it?
PTH, parathyroid hormone.
This is the hero of the calcium story.
Absolutely. If your blood calcium drops even a little, your parathyroid glands, these tiny glands in your neck, sense it instantly. They release PTH. PTH then goes to the distal tubule of the kidney and essentially says, open the transcellular channels, save every single molecule of calcium you can.
So it creates an active transport pathway.
Yes. This is the fine-tuning knob. It accounts for that last 4 to 9% of reabsorption, but it's the part that determines your final calcium balance.
But the source links calcium directly to phosphate. It seems like phosphate is the sacrificial lamb for calcium.
It is the martyr of the ion world. It has to be.
Why? Why do they have this inverse relationship?
Because of something called the solubility product. Calcium and phosphate love each other. If you put them in a beaker together at high enough concentrations, they will bind and form crystals, calcium phosphate. That's what bone is.
Which is great for your skeleton, but really bad for your blood.
Terrible for your blood. If your calcium and phosphate are both high in the blood at the same time, you will literally start to calcify your soft tissues. You will turn your arteries into bone. So when the body needs to raise calcium levels using PTH...
It has to get rid of phosphate at the same time?
Exactly. PTH has two main jobs at the kidney. It tells the tubules, save calcium, but dump phosphate. It actively inhibits phosphate reabsorption. This brilliant mechanism allows free calcium to rise without the danger of it crystallizing in your blood vessels.
That explains the overflow mechanism that was mentioned in the outline for phosphate.
Well, the overflow mechanism is how phosphate is handled in general, even without PTH. The kidney has a transport maximum for it. It's like a bucket with a fixed size. The proximal tubule can hold, say, 0.1 millimole of phosphate.
Okay.
If the amount of phosphate you filter is below that amount, you reabsorb all of it. But if it's above that amount, which it usually is in most diets, the excess just spills over into the urine.
So we are almost always spilling phosphate.
Pretty much. Modern diets are very high in phosphate. We are constantly in overflow mode, and PTH just pushes that overflow even higher.
Before we leave the microsection, just a quick word on magnesium. The outline calls it the loop specialist.
Yeah, magnesium is the odd one out. For most of these ions, sodium, potassium, calcium, the proximal tubule does most of the bulk reabsorption. For magnesium, the proximal tubule only takes about 25%.
So where does the work get done?
The loop of Henle does the heavy lifting. It reabsorbs about 65% of the filtered magnesium.
This has a clinical implication for certain diuretics, doesn't it?
A huge one. So-called loop diuretics like furosemide or Lasix are some of the most powerful diuretics we have. They work by shutting down the transport systems in the loop of Henle.
To make you pee out more salt and water.
Right. But if you shut down the loop, you also shut down magnesium reabsorption. You just pee it all out. This is why many patients, especially heart failure patients on high doses of Lasix, often get leg cramps, ripness, and even dangerous heart arrhythmias. They've become magnesium depleted.
It all connects. The side effect is written right into the mechanism.
It all connects.
Okay, we have covered the micro, the ions. Now I want to zoom out. We need to talk about the macro, the plumbing, blood volume, blood pressure, and salt.
This is the integrative part of the chapter. This is where the kidney stops being just a chemist and starts being a hydraulic engineer for the entire body.
And the bridge here seems to be sodium. We didn't talk much about sodium regulation in the microsection.
Because sodium is volume. For all practical purposes, they're the same thing.
Explain that. Why is sodium the key?
Sodium is the main solute, the main particle, in the extracellular fluid. And because of osmosis, it's a magnet for water. Where sodium goes, water follows. So if you can control the total amount of sodium in the body, you are controlling the volume of your blood.
Okay, so the basic equation is simple. Input must equal output.
Deceptively simple, right? But the precision required is terrifying. Think about the numbers. Your kidneys filter about 180 liters of fluid a day. That contains about 25,000 millicu of sodium.
A massive, massive amount.
Now imagine your tubular reabsorption, which is normally about 99.5% efficient, drops by just 1%.
1% doesn't sound like a lot.
In this context, 1% of 180 liters is 1.8 liters. If your kidney efficiency dropped by just 1%, you would lose nearly 2 liters of fluid in a matter of hours. You would go into circulatory collapse.
So the balance between filtration and reabsorption has to be tuned to a fraction of a percent constantly.
Constantly. Day in, day out.
So how does the body regulate this balance so precisely? The source talks about pressure natriuresis. This seems to be the most primitive, foundational concept of it all.
It is the bedrock of long-term blood pressure control. Everything else is built on top of this.
How does it work? Is it a hormone?
No, it's simpler than that. It's a mechanical feedback loop. Imagine your blood volume goes up. Maybe you drank too much water and ate too much salt at a party. That extra volume increases the return of blood to your heart, which increases your cardiac output, which in turn raises your arterial blood pressure.
Okay, so blood pressure is up.
When blood pressure rises, the kidney physically senses that higher hydraulic pressure. It does two things. One, it pushes a little more fluid through the filter, so GFR increases slightly. But more importantly, the high pressure in the capillaries around the tubules physically decreases tubular reabsorption.
So the kidney simply stops saving as much salt and water.
It physically cannot reabsorb as well against that higher back pressure. So the end result is simple. Higher pressure leads to more urine output. Pressure natriuresis, meaning salt excretion, and pressure diuresis, meaning water excretion.
Now, the source uses a term here that sounded like engineering jargon to me. Infinite gain.
Yes. This is crucial to understanding why the kidney is king when it comes to blood pressure.
Break it down. What is gain?
In control systems theory, gain is a measure of how effectively a system corrects an error. Let's take the thermostat in your house. That has finite gain.
Okay, I set it to 72 degrees.
Right. If the temperature drops to 70, the heater turns on. But maybe the house settles at 71.5 degrees. It gets close to the target, but there's still a little bit of an error. It's not perfect. It accepts close enough.
But the kidney.
The pressure natriuresis mechanism has, for all practical purposes, infinite gain. That means it is relentless. It refuses to accept any error. If your blood pressure is high, the kidney will excrete volume and keep excreting day after day until the pressure returns to the exact equilibrium point that the kidney is set to.
It doesn't settle for close enough.
Never. It's like a thermostat that, if the house got to 72.1 degrees, didn't just turn off the heat, but started blasting liquid nitrogen into the room until it hit 72,000. That is the kidney. It creates an almost vertical line on the graph of pressure versus output. It dictates the long-term blood pressure of the entire organism.
So if someone has chronic high blood pressure, hypertension, what does that mean?
It means their kidney's set point has shifted. For some reason, their kidney thinks that the higher pressure is normal. If you tried to lower their pressure with drugs that didn't affect the kidney, their kidney would fight you by retaining salt and water to push the pressure right back up.
That is profound. The kidney decides what normal is.
Exactly. It owns the long-term set point.
Now, this primitive pressure system is overlaid with a complex hormonal system, the generals of the volume control army. Let's meet the cast. First, the sympathetic nervous system.
The emergency responder. If you get into a car accident and have a massive hemorrhage, your blood pressure plummets. The sympathetic nerves fire instantly. They constrict the renal arteries.
They try to shut down the factory.
Essentially, they dramatically reduce filtration to save every drop of fluid. And they yell at the tubular cells, reabsorb everything, we are bleeding out. It's a desperate short-term attempt to keep you alive for the next hour until you can get to a hospital.
Then we have angiotensin II. The source calls this the salt retainer.
Angiotensin II is probably the most powerful hormone we have for restoring volume. It's activated whenever pressure is low or when salt levels are low.
What does it do?
It does everything. It constricts arterioles all over the body to keep pressure up. It stimulates aldosterone release. But crucially, it goes directly to the kidney tubules and stimulates all the sodium pumps and transporters. It's a powerful signal to save salt.
And the source says it shifts the curve. What does that mean?
Let's go back to our pressure natriuresis graph. Normally, a certain blood pressure creates a certain amount of urine output. Angiotensin II shifts that entire curve to the right. That means that for any given blood pressure, the kidney will now hold on to more salt than it normally would.
So to get the kidney to excrete the same amount of salt, you need a much higher pressure.
Yes. And this is why high levels of angiotensin cause hypertension. It forces the body to maintain a higher blood pressure just to achieve normal salt balance.
Which explains why ACE inhibitors are such common and effective blood pressure drugs.
Exactly. ACE inhibitors block the formation of angiotensin II. By doing that, they shift the pressure natriuresis curve back to the left. They allow the kidney to excrete salt at a lower, healthier pressure. You are literally reprogramming the kidney's set point.
Then there's aldosterone again. We talked about it with potassium, but here it is again, fine-tuning salt.
Right. Aldosterone acts on the very end of the tubule in the collecting ducts to grab that last little bit of sodium. But there is a fascinating phenomenon here that the source describes called aldosterone escape.
This sounds like a Prison Break movie.
It's a physiological safety valve, and it explains a lot about the symptoms of patients with certain adrenal tumors.
Walk us through the scenario.
Okay. Imagine a patient with Conn syndrome. They have a tumor that is pumping out massive, unregulated amounts of aldosterone.
So the kidney is being told, save salt, save salt, save salt 24/7.
Right. So initially, the patient retains salt and water, their blood volume expands, their blood pressure starts to rise.
I'll swell up like a balloon.
At first, yes. But here's the magic. As the blood pressure continues to rise, that primitive pressure natriuresis mechanism we talked about, the one with infinite gain, wakes up and starts to fight back.
The mechanical system.
Yes, the pressure gets high enough that it simply overrides the hormonal signal from aldosterone. The high physical pressure forces sodium and water excretion through the tubules, even though aldosterone is screaming at them to stop.
So the pressure forces the door open, even though the hormone is trying to lock it.
Correct. The patient escapes the salt and water retaining effects of aldosterone. So these patients have very high blood pressure, but they don't have massive edema. They don't keep swelling forever. They reach a new high-pressure equilibrium where input and output are balanced again.
Does this escape mechanism work for potassium?
No.
Yeah.
And that's the clinical tragedy. The escape mechanism relies on physical pressure pushing fluid out. But potassium secretion is driven by the aldosterone-stimulated pump. Aldosterone continues to mercilessly tell the principal cells to dump potassium.
So the patient isn't swollen, but they have dangerously high blood pressure and dangerously low potassium.
Exactly. That is the classic clinical presentation of Conn syndrome.
Got it. Now, what about the hormones that help us dump volume when we have too much?
That would be ANP, atrial natriuretic peptide.
I just love that the heart is also an endocrine gland. It's not just a pump.
It is. When the atria, the top chambers of the heart, are stretched by too much blood volume, they release this hormone, ANP.
And ANP goes to the kidney and tells it to let it go.
It does the opposite of all the other hormones. It inhibits sodium reabsorption. It relaxes the renal arteries to increase filtration. It's the anti-aldosterone. It is the body's safety valve for volume overload.
So let's integrate all of this. The source gives two scenarios that really bring it together. Let's play them out. Scenario 1, the Super Bowl party. I eat a bag of pretzels, some pepperoni pizza, tons of salt. What happens inside me?
Okay, step by step. You eat the salt. Your plasma osmolarity rises. That makes you thirsty. You drink a lot of water.
So now I have high salt and high water. My blood volume expands.
Correct. Your pressure rises slightly. The kidney and the rest of the body sense this immediately. Step 1. Your sympathetic nervous system activity drops. The arteries relax. Step 2. The kidney senses the high pressure and high salt, so renin and angiotensin II levels plummet. The salt retainer leaves the building.
Good.
Step 3. Because angiotensin II is gone, aldosterone levels also drop. Step 4. Your heart stretches from the extra volume and releases AMP.
So every single hormonal system is screaming GUMP, salt.
Exactly. The result is a massive increase in sodium excretion. And in a healthy person, your blood pressure barely budges. The system handles the load perfectly and efficiently.
Okay, scenario 2. The horror movie. I get attacked in the woods. I lose a liter of blood.
The complete opposite cascade. Her blood pressure drops. The body goes into panic mode. Step 1. The sympathetic system fires like crazy, constrict the arteries, save flow for the brain and heart. Step 2. The low pressure triggers a massive release of renin, so angiotensin II levels skyrocket. Angiotensin II clamps down on everything to retain every last molecule of salt. Step 3. Aldosterone levels rise to help scrub the last bit of sodium from the urine. Step 4. ADH, antidiuretic hormone, is released from the brain to stop all water loss.
Result. The kidney virtually stops making urine. It holds onto every drop of salt and water to try and rebuild your blood volume.
Precisely. It's a life-saving response.
This brings us to the final section, and I think this is the most heartbreaking part of the physiology, when it all goes wrong. Edema.
Edema is just excess fluid in the tissues, swelling. But the body has amazing safeguards against it. Normally, the pressure in the spaces between your cells, the interstitial fluid, is actually negative, about -3 mmHg.
It's like a vacuum, sucking things together.
Yes, exactly. It acts like a suction, holding your skin tight to your muscle. It actively prevents fluid from pooling in the tissues.
So to get edema, you have to break that vacuum.
You have to overwhelm it. Once you push enough fluid in there that the pressure rises above 0, the tissue suddenly becomes compliant. It loses its resistance and starts to stretch.
Like blowing up a balloon. It's really hard to start, but once it starts to inflate, it fills up easily.
That's a perfect analogy. Once you cross that 0 pressure threshold, massive amounts of fluid can pour into the tissue spaces with very little additional pressure.
Let's talk about the diseases. Congestive heart failure. The source makes this sound like a tragic confusion of signals.
It's a tragic confusion. In heart failure, the heart is a weak pump. It can't push blood forward effectively. As a result, the arterial blood pressure drops.
So the kidney, sensing low pressure, thinks, low pressure, we must be bleeding.
Exactly. The kidney has no idea the heart is failing. It just sees low pressure and triggers the full-blown hemorrhage response we just described. Retain salt, retain water, activate angiotensin.
But the patient isn't bleeding. They're actually already overloaded with fluid because the weak heart isn't moving it.
Right. The fluid is backing up in the veins because the heart can't pump it forward. And now the kidney is adding more fluid to the fire, trying to help.
So the blood volume shoots up,
Yeah.
the pressure in the veins distends, and the fluid leaks out into the lungs.
Pulmonary edema. The patient literally drowns in their own fluids. And the kidney is doing the right thing according to its programming, which is restore arterial pressure. But in this specific context, its right action kills the patient.
That is why we treat heart failure with diuretics. To tell the kidney, stop helping, you're making it worse.
Exactly. Save the patient.
What about nephrotic syndrome, another cause of massive edema?
In this case, the kidney itself is the primary problem. The glomerulus, the filter, becomes leaky. It starts letting huge amounts of protein, especially albumin, pass through into the urine.
So you pee out your precious protein?
And remember, protein is what holds water in your blood vessels. It provides oncotic pressure. If you lose the protein, the water can't stay in the blood vessels. It leaks out into the tissues.
So you get edema, swelling all over.
You get massive, massive edema. But here it creates a vicious cycle. Because all the fluid has left the blood vessels and gone into the tissues, the actual circulating blood volume drops. The kidney senses low volume and does what?
It retains more salt and water.
Right. Which just leaks out into the tissues again because there is no protein to hold it in the blood.
It's a vicious, terrible cycle. The patient just swells up like a balloon.
It's just a horrifying feedback loop.
It's amazing how central the kidney is to all of these diverse conditions. Heart failure, liver failure, severe malnutrition. They all end up becoming kidney management problems in the end.
That really is the synthesis of this whole deep dive. The kidney is the linchpin. It is juggling these dangerous microions, potassium, calcium, that can kill you in a matter of minutes if they're wrong. And at the exact same time, it is managing the macro mechanical hydraulics of the entire cardiovascular system.
And it does it with these elegant safety factors. The fact that we can eat a high-salt diet or a low-salt diet, a high-potassium meal or a low one, and our internal chemistry stays rock steady. It's truly miraculous.
It is. It's a system with redundant fail-safes, engineered over millions and millions of years to be robust.
So here is the provocative thought I want to leave our listeners with. The source touched on this idea of ancestral diet.
Yes, this is a great perspective to end on.
If you think about our ancestors, the hunter-gatherers, what were they eating? Roots, tubers, fruits, berries, maybe some lean mammoth meat now and then.
Right. Whatever they could find.
That diet is extremely high in potassium, all those plants. And at the same time, it's extremely low in sodium. They didn't have salt shakers. There were no processed foods.
The estimate is that they consumed maybe 20 to 30 milliequivalents of sodium a day, but hundreds of milliequivalents of potassium.
So our entire physiology, these principal cells, this whole aldosterone system, it evolved in that environment. The primary challenge for a caveman was, I have way too much potassium that I need to get rid of, and I'm desperate to find and save any salt I can.
Exactly. We are built to be salt-retaining potassium-dumping machines. That is our factory setting.
But now, look at our modern world. We live in a world of potato chips, processed deli meats, canned soups, and fast food. Incredibly high sodium, incredibly low potassium.
We have completely flipped the script. We are consuming 10 or 20 times the sodium our kidneys were designed to handle, and maybe a fraction of the potassium they expect.
We are putting an ancestral engine designed for a specific fuel mix into a modern environment that does the exact opposite of what it was built for.
It's like trying to drive a Formula One car through a swamp. It's just not what it was made for.
So I wonder, how much of the modern epidemic of hypertension, how much of this constant stress on our kidneys is simply that fundamental mismatch? Our kidneys are fighting a heroic, uphill battle every single day against our diet.
It's a profound question, and a lot of the data suggests that simply reversing that ratio, eating more potassium-rich foods and less processed salt, dramatically lowers blood pressure in many people. Maybe the best thing we can do for our kidneys is to try to mimic that ancestral balance just a little more.
Something to chew on. Next time you eat a banana or some potatoes, think about those little principal cells in your kidneys pumping away to save your life.
They're working hard for you. Don't take them for granted.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll catch you on the next one.